3 spine-chilling tales of sinister family secrets, revealed horrors uncovered after 25 years. The shadows lingered longer than usual in Maplewood, a suburb once deemed the epitome of family-friendly living. But now, as Sarah pulled into her childhood driveway, the air felt thick and oppressive, like a secret wrapped in darkness awaited her. She survived 2 decades without her father's shadow looming over her, and yet, it now felt as if everything she thought she knew was about to shatter. The moment her foot hit the cracked pavement, she knew something was wrong. Every corner of her father's house echoed with memories she thought she had locked away. The bright blue paint that once radiated warmth now appeared dull, breathing a silent threat. Creaks of the old floorboards squealed beneath her weight as she entered, haunting whispers of a life she hardly recognized. A chill ran down her spine when she noticed an assortment of journals stacked neatly on his desk, as if begging to be opened. Her heart raced, dread creeping in like fog. What could he have possibly written about her, and more chillingly, about their family? As she flipped through the brittle pages, her stomach knotted. Each word dripped with clandestine confessions. There were tallies next to names, cryptic notes detailing the betrayals of not just her father, but neighbors she once thought were friends. Her father, the pillar of this community, was hiding a monstrous truth. "Sarah? Is that you?" A voice cracked through the murmur of her thoughts. She turned sharply to find Mrs. Dawson, the neighbor with the perfectly manicured lawn, her smile a mask of concern. But in her eyes fear. "We haven't seen you since the funeral. Everything all right?" "Just settling some affairs," Sarah replied with a nervous smile, but Mrs. Dawson's gaze shifted towards the house, her expression twisting into something vaguely closer to disgust. The friendly facade began to peel. Sarah felt exposed, the whispers carried on the wind, wrapping around her like an unwanted cloak. The neighborhood felt alive, watching her, judging. That night, Tommy shuffled down the hall, clutching his flashlight like a lifeline. His little face was drawn tight, eyes wide with fear. "Mommy, I think someone's watching us." I felt it. Panic shot through Sarah. Who would dare? She dismissed his fears, but the uneasy feeling gripped her. The lights flickered ominously outside, casting slicing shadows through her curtains. She hugged Tommy close, her heartbeat hammering as a car rolled slowly by their house. Hitched breaths filled the silence, tightening the claustrophobic space around them. "Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let us continue. The dread escalated with each passing day. Something probing, lurking, zeroing in on her secrets. After another sleepless night, she stumbled across a file labeled Foundation, tied up with a frayed ribbon. Inside lay documents and photographs that revealed connections she could never have fathomed. A web of deceit choking the very essence of Maplewood. It was a charitable foundation turned sinister, a facade that veiled abuse, hidden behind the name of her father. Just then, a cold shiver coursed through her bones. There was a knock at the door, but Sarah found only a chilling note left on the porch. "We see you, Sarah. You shouldn't have come back." Her breath quickened, lungs constricting as the true weight of her reality crashed down. The very ground she stood on felt tainted, the walls whispering warnings that echoed deep within her soul. She now understood she was not merely investigating her past, she was stepping into a perilous dance with darkness, and the next misstep could seal her fate forever. What awaited her as she plunged deeper? Would the past consume her before she could unveil the truth? The next morning, dread hung over Sarah like a storm cloud, heavy and unyielding. She hovered beside the kitchen table, staring at the discarded note, her fingers trembling as they traced the jagged edges of the paper. The words echoed in her mind, "We see you." Each syllable sent electric chills racing down her arms. Tommy sat at the breakfast bar, wearing his cereal-like armor, scooping it slowly, eyes darting toward the window. The sun spilled over Maplewood, an ordinary day in a poisoned paradise. Sarah forced a smile, but it crumbled when she saw Mrs. Dawson across the street, her gaze fixed with an intensity that sent tremors through Sarah's very core. What did they know? The unsettling feeling pooled in her stomach again. She needed something, anything, to grasp tightly that could demystify the shadows creeping closer. With a decisive breath, she decided to visit the town's archives. Maybe there would be more hidden accounts of her father's foundation buried beneath layers of history, something that could explain the terror woven through her childhood and now encroaching upon her life again. The local library, a decrepit structure with peeling paint and cracked tiles, greeted her with an air of age-old secrets. Dust motes danced in the sunlight streaming through the small, grimy windows. Sarah felt the weight of every gaze in the dim room focused on her, a dagger-like scrutiny that turned the air frigid. She approached the librarian, a frail figure with a pair of thick glasses perched on her nose. "I need information on the Maplewood Children's Foundation," Sarah spoke, her voice cracking, but the librarian didn't flinch. "Why, dear?" The librarian's voice was raspy, as if it had been dug out from years of whispers. It caused quite a stir back in the day. "The things I could tell you, but some things are best left forgotten." "I need to know," Sarah insisted, her chest tightening with urgency. With a sigh, the librarian nodded toward the back. "There's a filing cabinet. The files on that foundation are there. But be warned, some truths are dangerous." As Sarah rifled through the faded files, paragraphs of regret unfolded before her. Stories of children missing, mysterious disappearances, and accusations of unspeakable acts buried under the weight of community silence. Her hands shook as the implications crashed over her like icy waves. This was why the neighbors watched her with fear. She was probing at wounds that hadn't healed. Suddenly, a loud crash shattered the silence behind her. Heart racing, she whirled around, flash of movement catching her peripheral vision. The librarian stood frozen, eyes wide with fear and panic. "You must leave," she hissed. "They're coming for you." Breath hitched, Sarah took a tentative step back, the air thickening with something sinister. "Who's coming?" The librarian pointed toward the entrance, her hands trembling. Sarah turned to see figures loitering, faces obscured by shadows far too deep. Fear pulsed in her veins, a primal instinct screaming for her to escape. "Run! You shouldn't be here," the librarian urged, panic lacing her voice. Without a second thought, Sarah sprinted towards the exit, adrenaline keeping her from the frozen grip of fear. She could hear hurried footsteps behind her, thudding like a warning drum. She dashed outside into the blazing sun, but the heat felt suffocating. As she glanced back, the librarian's warning echoed in her mind, "Some truths are dangerous." But who were the figures? Were they affiliated with her father's past? The shadows stretched longer as dusk settled over Maplewood, the ghostly outlines of the neighborhood remembering secrets that shouldn't be disturbed. Sarah's pulse raced with confusion and fear as she drove away from the library. She may have escaped this time, but the hunt had only just begun. What awaited her back home? Would she truly uncover the darkness lurking beneath the surface, or would the very people she trusted turn against her? The drive back home twisted like a labyrinth in Sarah's mind. With each turn of the steering wheel, shadows seemed to grow more pronounced, shadows that were all too familiar. It was as if the entire town had turned into a silent witness, their eyes trained on her, sharing whispered secrets she was desperate to understand. As she pulled into her driveway, every muscle in her body tensed. The house loomed before her, a tired structure with peeling paint that mirrored her own fraught nerves. Would Tommy be safe inside? Did he sense the encroaching danger? She took a deep breath, steeling herself against the shadows trying to claw their way back into her thoughts. "Hey, buddy!" she called lightly, forcing cheer into her voice as she stepped into the house and heard the familiar sounds of the TV echoing from the living room. But the vibrant colors of the cartoon on screen felt dim and hollow. Tommy was there, his eyes glued to the screen, innocence painted on his young face. For now, that was enough. But the strain of normalcy was brittle. The weight of the librarian's warning loitered in the air like a storm cloud threatening to break. What if the figures from the library had followed her? What if they knew Tommy's name? Her heart raced with an urgency she couldn't ignore. "Tommy, sweetie, why don't you go play in your room for a while?" she suggested, her voice trembling slightly. He glanced up, confusion creeping into his cherubic features. "Can't I watch my show?" He pouted, but she gently pushed him towards the stairs, her mind racing with the dark possibilities lurking outside their walls. "Just for a little while." With reluctance, he trudged up the stairs, leaving her alone. Sarah sank into the couch, the roar of the TV fading into an oppressive hush. She needed answers. The files. The deaths. The disappearances. She flipped through the scattered memories in her mind, trying to connect the dots. Grabbing her phone, she scrolled through the contacts, her fingers shaking, and hit the call button for an old friend, someone who might know the history she was rifling through. The line rang. "Sarah? Is everything okay?" Jenna's voice came through, thick with sleep. "Not really. I need your help. Can we meet?" "Sure, but is everything all right?" "Just meet me at the diner, please." After hanging up, she slipped the phone into her pocket. The thought of heading back outside filled her with dread. The sun had set, and the chill of the night crept over her skin like icy fingers. As she opened the door, the air thickened with a tension so palpable it sucked the breath from her lungs. She stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking ominously beneath her weight, and peered into the darkness that enveloped her yard. A flicker caught her eye, a movement in the shadows. Her heartbeat thundered loudly in her ears. There, standing just beyond the boundary of the yard, were the silhouettes. All three of them, still as statues, their features obscured in the night. "Tommy!" she screamed, panic rising like bile. "Get down!" Sarah lunged inside, slamming the door shut behind her, but the moment it clicked, she heard whispering on the other side. Not words, but chilling murmurs, as if the darkness itself was alive, trying to weave its way into her home. "Sarah," a voice croaked softly, eerily familiar. Terror clawed at her throat. "What do you want?" Silence hung heavy for a moment, and then one of the figures took a step into the light, revealing a face masked in shadows, the faint glint of a knowing smile emerging through the darkness. "It's time to embrace the truth." In that moment, Sarah realized she had only just scratched the surface of the horrors her family was entangled in. The deeper she dug, the more perilous the path she tread. But the question remained, would she be brave enough to confront what lay beneath the facade of Maplewood, or would the darkness consume her whole? As the shadows moved closer to her retreat, the whispers grew louder, echoing through her mind. What had she awakened in her quest for the truth? Sarah staggered back from the door, her heart pounding in her chest like a drum. The familiar echo of Sarah lingered in the air, a sickly sweet melody twisting into a warning. The whispers collided with her nerves as she pressed her back against the cold wall, straining to hear the murmurs outside. "Tommy!" she called again, her voice cracking. The sound of childish laughter floated down from upstairs, a stark contrast to the dread enveloping her. She fought against the urge to run to him, terror rooting her in place. Shadows scraped against the glass, restless and hungry. "Mommy, is everything okay?" Tommy's innocent voice broke through the tension, pulling her focus from the figures outside. "Stay in your room, sweetheart." Panic edged her voice. She reached for the front window and peeked through the curtains. But what she saw sent a spike of ice through her veins. The figures had moved closer, their outlines shifting in the light. They were no longer still. They were circling her home like wolves stalking prey. She fumbled for her phone, trembling hands desperate to find some means of protection. Her email app fluttered open. She began typing furiously to Jenna, a plea for help, but the screen flickered before her eyes. The dim light pulsed, and shadows flickered on the walls like flames whispering secrets. The power. The thrum of electricity sputtered. "Stay calm, Sarah. Breathe," she whispered to herself, trying to quell the frantic beat of her heart. The laughter from Tommy's room ceased, replaced by silence so thick it nearly suffocated her. And then it cut through a soft tap on the window, a reminder that she wasn't alone. Sarah, the voice was deeper now, smooth like syrup winding into her ears. "Open the door." Something compelled her. The allure was like a cold hand wrapping around her throat, squeezing tighter. She shook her head, grounding herself in the moment. There had to be a way out. The back door? The garage door? But what if they were waiting there too? A thought pricked at her. Jenna had mentioned the files. The old town records buried in the library might hold secrets. She hadn't been brave enough to explore before, but she had to act. "Tommy!" she shouted, racing toward the staircase. She burst into his room, where he sat cross-legged with wide, confused eyes. "Mommy, what's wrong? Get your things. We're leaving. Now." He nodded, wide-eyed but obedient, beginning to shove toys into his backpack. The murmurs outside intensified, and the shadows clawed at the window now, urging her to reevaluate, to consider what truth she would uncover. "Where are we going?" The urgency rose in her blood, quickening her pulse. "We're going to your uncle's. We'll be safe there." She snatched his backpack in his small hand, moving back toward the door. But as she reached for the handle, the ominous whispering crescendoed outside, drowning out her thoughts. "Sarah, you can't run from us." She froze, transfixed by the unnerving familiarity of that voice. It was an echo of her past, that first loss, the first secret buried deep. Something stirred within her, a flicker of recognition that electrified her skin. "Tommy," she said, panic charging her tone, "we need to stay inside." But it was too late. The shadows shimmered like smoke, swarming to the door, clawing at her sanity. They beckoned with promises of knowledge, of truths long hidden. In that suffocating moment, she had a decision to make: would she escape the familiar terrors, or confront them head-on? Tommy tugged at her hand. "Mommy, hurry." Just then, the door swung open with a creak so loud it felt like a shout in a whispering world. A figure loomed at the threshold, engulfed in shadow and memory. A chill ripped through her. The time for running was over. "What will you choose, Sarah?" the figure asked, stepping forward. Dread settled deep in her bones as the looming face glimmered with the haunting knowledge of all that had been lost and what still shattered the world she knew, and for the first time, she wondered if escaping wasn't the answer, but facing the truth that had haunted her. Whole life. As she stood there, paralyzed by the shadowy figure's gaze, an unsettling realization dawned on her: uncovering the truth might mean confronting losses she had buried deep and war she could never escape. Would she find a way to break the cycle, or would darkness claim her and her son, just as it had done before? The figure stepped closer, the shadows swirling around it like restless smoke, as Sarah fought the instinct to recoil. The air thickened with an unseen weight, making it hard to breathe. She gripped Tommy's hand tighter, feeling his pulse quicken next to hers. "Don't be afraid, Sarah," the figure crooned, and the familiarity of its voice struck a nerve deep within her. "I'm here to help you remember." There was an allure in its tone, a dark promise that threatened to unravel her resolve. But Sarah couldn't afford to be drawn in. "What do you want?" she demanded, raising her voice as if to challenge the very essence of the shadow. "What do I want?" it asked, the question hanging in the air, serene yet laced with malice. "I want you to free yourself from the burden of forgetting." Tommy whimpered. "Mommy, please." Stay behind me. She growled, her instinct to protect him overpowering the fear curling in her gut. But she couldn't ignore the tension of the dark figure before her. It wore the shape of someone she used to know, someone lost, someone she had buried in that forgotten past. The memories clawed at her, laughter turned to tears, promises that rotted away like forgotten leaves. I've shown you the door, but you must choose to walk through it, the figure said, extending a shadowy hand toward her. You cannot run away any longer, Sarah. Your history waits for you in the library. Shut up. She spat, backing away instinctively. Maybe you need a little push, it countered, and as those words washed over her, the room fell silent. A creeping dread filled the air. Then suddenly, the walls resonated with a heartbeat, a soft thrum that matched her own racing pulse. One by one, the shadows outside pressed against the windows, filling the glass with dark shapes, squeezing into her world like a vice. Tommy! We need to go now. She shouted, urgency pouring from every fiber of her being. She turned in search of an escape route, but as she turned, the door slammed shut behind them with a resounding thud that rattled her bones. The laughter of the figures outside transformed into distinct voices, a choral harmony of whispers that blended eerily, luring her with nostalgic tones. Sarah, we're counting on you. The sound of her name echoed, chilling her spine. No! She yelled, fear flooding her voice. Stay away from us. Tommy clutched her leg, his wide eyes reflecting back the scintillating horror, a mirror of her own. Mommy, I'm scared. In that moment, the shadows grew more restless, thrashing against the walls and floor as if trying to burst in. She frantically searched for an escape, her breaths labored, her mind racing. Papers strewn on the floor gave way to half-remembered matches struck in darkened rooms. But the memories didn't give her comfort, they were the very things she had fought to escape. Face what you've hidden, the figure whispered, a slither of sound that chilled her resolve. The truth is in the shadows. Heart hammering, Sarah's eyes darted to the corner where a single dusty light flickered, the forgotten lamp where she had once sat with her mother, hidden stories grazing her childhood. The lights dimmed and the shadows warped, creating spectral glimpses of her past. Something was buried, she thought, realization hitting her like a freight train. Something terrible. Come, Sarah, the figure beckoned, weaving through darkness. All will be revealed. You can't bring him with you, but I can help you. You'll understand all the pain you've buried. No! She cried, panic edging the corners of her mind. As she grabbed Tommy's small hand and squeezed, she vowed silently. I'll protect you. Whatever it takes. Just then, the ground trembled beneath her, a resonance of voices rising, crashing like waves against the shore. The relentless whisper enveloped her, calling her to drift into that dreadful cavern where the truth lay. In that stricken moment, as the shadows writhed, Sarah realized, to save her son, she must confront the very darkness she feared. But what if that meant losing everything she held dear? As the figure loomed closer, Sarah felt a shiver run through her as she braced for the truth. Would she accept the secrets of her past and the cost they carried? Or would she succumb to the darkness that sought to devour her and Tommy whole? What lay waiting in the library would change everything. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, a frantic drumbeat drowning out the cacophony of whispers. She felt as if gravity itself had shifted, drawing her inexorably toward the figure. Desperation clawed at her, and she tightened her grip on Tommy's hand as if it were a lifeline tethering her to reality. But with every second, the shadows pulsed, and the dim corners of the room seemed to breathe. Mommy! Tommy whimpered, his small voice barely breaking through the suffocating darkness. What if it's lying? She shot him a pleading look, wishing she could banish the fear that twisted his features. I won't let anything happen to you, I promise, she whispered, forcing calmness into her voice. Then face what you've hidden, the figure urged, its voice dripping with venomous sweetness. Dive into the library and let it wash over you. You won't run away anymore, Sarah. Around them, the shadows reared like a tidal wave, and the walls creaked with unnatural life. The heartbeat throbbed louder, now unfurling into a chaotic drumroll. Each thump sent vibrations through the floor, steadying Sarah's resolve, even as panic knotted her stomach. "Whatever you do, don't look," she hissed at Tommy, her eyes locked on the towering figure that seemed to stretch and bend like smoke. "We'll find another way out." But the room had other plans. One hand slipped from Tommy's grasp, and before she could react, he darted toward the figure that beckoned like a moth to a flame. "Tommy, no." She lunged to grab him, but the shadows clawed at her calves, tangling her legs as they drew her back, almost relishing her struggle. "Tommy!" She screamed, her voice a raw echo in the stifling air. The figure now loomed over her son, its silhouette framed by the flickering light. It knelt, the shadows swirling around it like a cloak of twisted memories. "Come to me, child. All will be made clear." Sarah felt her chest tighten. Fear morphed into horror as she fought against the darkness gripping her limbs. "You don't have to listen to it," she cried, forcing her voice through the weight. "You're stronger than this." The shadows laughed softly, a horrifying symphony that filled the room with a chilling resonance. "Stronger or just more foolish?" The figure hissed, its gaze a void threatening to pull them in. That moment, she saw it. A flicker in Tommy's eyes, a glimmer of recognition. The same shadows had tantalized her as a child, coaxing her toward forgotten memories she had long buried. But why now? "Remember what I told you, the past can only hurt you if you let it," she said, feeling her own resolve rekindle. "Trust me. Trust yourself." Suddenly, a shriek punctured the air, shattering the unnerving calm. It reverberated like glass shattering. Moments of silence erupted into chaos. Small hands, now trembling, shot into the air, and she barely caught Tommy's arm, yanking him away from the figure. They stumbled backward, fear overriding the instinct to dive into the familiar with reckless abandon. "Run!" Sarah shouted, adrenaline surging as the door trembled against the force of a newfound energy. The shadows were all-consuming now, monstrous and insatiable, clawing their way toward her. They broke for the door, but it twisted and melded into the wall, a grotesque form that mocked her escape. The meetings of whispers grew louder, each one a distorted tune of long-lost laughter. "No, no, please." The shadows surged again. She spun, eyes narrowing in determination, ready to face the figure once more. "Let me see it. Let me remember," she bellowed, her voice cutting through the deluge. In that moment, the figure smiled, a smile that twisted and burned, revealing a glimpse of secrets cradled in the darkness. "Ah, Sarah. You are finally ready." As the walls thrummed with anticipation, Sarah felt the pull toward something terrifyingly inevitable. Both son and mother stood suspended between what was long buried and the threatening truth that awaited, for the shadows had something to show them, something that could shatter the very foundation of who they were. But was Sarah willing to pay the awful price to unearth it? Outside, the world turned dark as the lights flickered, and the whispers clamored for her attention. In that harrowing moment, as the darkness closed in and memories began to surface, she wondered what would she discover in the library? And at what cost? Tommy's grip faltered, his tiny fingers slipping away from Sarah's hand as the figure's siren call wrapped around him. Sarah's heart raced, an animalistic urge competing with her desire to save her son. The shadows pulsed, urging her to give in to the claustrophobic darkness enveloping them. "Tommy, no." She shouted again, but her voice felt thin, barely a whisper against the growing din. She lunged toward him, but the shadows snarled, pulling her back, wrapping around her legs like a chain. "Do you not yearn for truth?" The figure crooned, its smooth, dark outline shifting with a life of its own. "How liberating it can be, lies." She screamed into the biting darkness, desperation dripping from every word. "You only twist the truth. Tommy." The shadows sneered, their whispers morphing into derisive laughter. "The truth? Ah, my dear. It has no place here. Tommy hesitated, confusion swirling in his innocent eyes as he looked up at the figure. But Mommy wants us to be safe. Sarah's breath caught, her chest tightening as she fought against the creeping waves of darkness. Trust me, Tommy. Remember the game we play? The only way to banish monsters is to face them. Her words hung in the air, a fragile lifeline reaching for him. For a heartbeat, the shadows receded just enough for him to consider the power of belief against the looming horror. Tommy! She cried, inching closer, her feet pulling free of the struggling tendrils of shadow. You can break free. Take my hand, child, the figure urged, its voice oozing with malice, every syllable a tightrope stretched between safety and despair. You can find strength in the dark. Tommy's brow furrowed, conflicted. Underneath the din, Sarah sensed something deeper, the familiar tug of her own past, where hidden fears loomed large, shape-shifting into monstrous forms. She recoiled, memories flooding back, ones she'd tried to bury beneath years of pain and shame. No! She shouted, as if strength of will could vanquish the darkness. You can't take him. Can't I? The figure said, its voice echoing, reverberating through the walls, thickening the atmosphere with tension. What do you think awaits in the library? Sarah realized then what was at stake. Whatever lay hidden in those pages could shatter their fragile reality. Secrets long buried were attempting to claw their way out. She could almost see them, a swirling tempest of anguish, regret, and rage. Tommy! She pleaded, her voice gaining strength. We need to go, now. The flickering lights overhead heightened the chaos, casting jagged shadows on the walls. For a moment, time froze the figure, its grip on Tommy slackening just slightly. Turn back, Sarah. The figure hissed. You can't erase history, let alone create a future without confronting your past. Choose wisely, or it will consume you both. But Sarah held steady. The connections between truth and nostalgia tangled in her mind. No more lies. I will not let you devour him. In a sudden burst of determination, she took another step closer to Tommy, now mere feet away. The shadows recoiled, rage flaring around them. With a mix of fear and anger coursing through her veins, she reached out her hands, pulling him close. Stay close, sweetheart. I won't leave you. But the shadows twisted, and the figure loomed larger. The air crackled with primal energy, and an explosion of blurred memories swirled around them, threatening to drown them in the past. Face the truth. It shrieked, the voice splintering like broken glass. Or you will perish in the tangled web of your own making. She hesitated, the weight of the moment crashing upon her. If she turned away now, would history consume them, leaving them trapped forever in this living nightmare? In the library, she thought, heart racing, the possibility unfolding like an invitation to confront destiny. If that were the truth, lies, but what truth awaited her inside? With that spark of resolve igniting her spirit, she turned toward the looming shadows. A twisted maze stretched out before her, beckoning both mother and son into its depths. Together, Sarah murmured, steeling herself for whatever horror lay ahead. We face it together. As the shadows danced around them, a final whisper sliced through the darkness. Welcome home, Sarah, and with that, they stepped forward into the black, where memories intertwined with dread. What awaited them in the library? Secrets or salvation? Only time would unravel the truth. The grasp of the shadows tightened around them, curling like tendrils of smoke, eager to drag them deeper into the abyss. Sarah pulled Tommy closer, the weight of her resolve anchoring her against the pulling terror. The air turned thick and oppressive, each breath a challenge against the intoxicating whispers that promised her the absolution she desperately craved. Don't listen to them, she murmured fiercely, staring into Tommy's wide eyes, still brimming with innocent confusion. No matter what they say, we stick together. Mommy, I'm scared. His voice barely broke through the cacophony of the shadows, pitiful and fragile like shattered glass. Me too, Sarah admitted, feeling the cold sweat bead on her brow. They moved cautiously into the darkness, where the promise of the library loomed, a dark wooden structure, its walls lined with books. Some were dust-covered relics, others pulsed with an ominous glow. Secrets were trapped within their spines, waiting to be unleashed. As they stepped inside, the door slammed shut behind them, a thunderclap that echoed through the hollow spaces like a warning bell. The faint smell of mold mixed with something acrid and bitter, biting her nostrils, heightening her dread. "Where are we?" Tommy whispered, hiding his face in her side. "Just keep close," Sarah replied, heart racing, feeling the shadows close in around the edges of her vision. They moved into the aisles, the towering shelves looming like unyielding sentinels. Books creaked under her fingertips, almost like they were whispering their own tales of despair and woe. "Should we read one?" Tommy asked, wide-eyed, pointing at a leather-bound volume glowing faintly. "No. Don't touch anything." She snatched his hand, dragging him past the elegant bindings that seemed to pulse with an unholy life of their own. The whispers grew louder. "Unravel your truth, Sarah. Find what you've buried." Panic surged within her. "No. We've come to escape you." But the call of the library, seductive and sweet, tugged at her insides. Memories twisted into snarled images, faces peering out from the depths of the yellowed pages, faces she had long tried to forget. "I'm here, Mommy." Tommy's voice fractured through the chaos, pulling her focus back. But even as she turned toward him, shadows danced at the periphery, warping reality. They coiled tightly, glinting with menace. "Tommy!" She gasped, her heart nearly stopping when she saw him standing before a broken mirror hanging crookedly on the wall. The surface shimmered unnaturally, reflecting scenes of her past, defining moments, lost loves, regrets that had clung like fog around her heart. "Mommy, what's wrong with it?" Tommy asked, fascination mixing with fear. "Don't look into it," she shouted, the urgency tightening her throat. The shadows vibrated with laughter, as if relishing her panic. "You have to stay away." But the boy leaned closer, transfixed. "It feels warm, Tommy." In a heartbeat, her son's reflection faltered, flickered like a dying flame. His eyes darkened, swirling amber with shadows that were not his own. "I can show you everything." The mirror's surface sang in her ear, seductive and sweet. "Your truth, Sarah. Your salvation or your doom." With desperation clawing at her chest, she hurled herself forward and yanked Tommy away. "No!" she screamed, the air turning to ice around them as the shadows writhed with rage, the figure materializing behind them once more, its grin sharp and predatory. "Truth is but a word," it hissed, wrapping around Sarah. "What do you fear most? What will you pay to find out?" The space crackled, vibrating with dread and turmoil as fractures began to spiderweb across the mirror's surface, threatening to burst. Sarah's breath hiked in her throat, heart hammering. The heaviness of their choices pressed upon them, and she could almost taste the bitterness of secrets begging to surface. "Tommy?" she whispered, glancing at him, seeing the fear reflected in his eyes. Then, without warning, the mirror exploded, shards scattering across the room like confetti, each piece reflecting memories both wonderful and terrible. "What awaits you next?" the figure crooned, a satisfied gleam in its dark eyes. With the world dissolving around her, Sarah held onto her son tightly. She had to make a choice. Whatever truth lay beyond the shattered glass could redefine everything, and now, with darkness swirling around them once more, she realized what lay ahead inside the library was not merely terror, but revelation. Would they emerge intact, or would the past consume them entirely? "Stay close," she urged, as the shadows lunged forward, hungry and impatient. "Whatever happens next, we face it together." As they braced for the chaos, a terrifying question echoed in the silence, lingering like a blade: could confronting the past save them, or would it destroy them forever? The library trembled. The once still air twisted with whispers turning desperate, a smothering blanket of dread that encased Sarah and Tommy. A chill crept into her bones, she couldn't shake it. Their only light now flickered, illuminated by the dying glow of wrecked memories scattered on the floor. "Mommy, I don't like this place," Tommy whimpered, his small voice ringing clear amidst the chaos. "Shoo." She pressed a finger to her lips, eyes darting, scanning the periphery. What lurked in the darkness? The figure loomed larger somehow. Its laughter mingled with the shadows, an echo of lost souls entwined in eternal torment. "Come," it beckoned softly, "you are closer to the truth than ever. Why fight it?" Sarah grit her teeth, urging her legs to move. "Tommy, this way." She pulled him toward the nearest archway, a hollow passage flanked by towering shelves. Each book felt alive, a silent witness to their plight, vibrating with a sinister hum. As they slipped through the arch, the world shifted. The aisle stretched indefinitely, twisting into unpredictable shapes. They ran, but the weight of the shadows followed like a relentless storm. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, the primal instinct to flee merging with an unfamiliar pull toward the secrets woven into the library's fabric. "Look!" Tommy shouted, nearly breaking free from her grasp. His finger pointed to a room glowing faintly at the far end, where the ominous whispers thinned slightly. "Stay with me," she demanded, tightening her grip as they evaded the cold shadows that lunged at their heels. They reached the door, dusty and warped but slightly ajar. Another flicker of light danced from within, a siren call that reverberated through Sarah's core. "Mommy, should we go in?" Tommy asked, eyes wide, a mix of wonder and fear swirling within. "No." But her voice faltered under the weight of curiosity. "I mean, we shouldn't, please?" His small face was earnest. Tears glimmered in his eyes. She knew the library was feeding on their fear, morphing into a thing of twisted nightmares. "I'll go first." It felt like a small lie, her fear contrasting with the need to protect him. She silently prayed for strength, then nodded, pushing the door open with cautious resolve. Inside, the light intensified, revealing a small reading space, cluttered with discarded pages. Words bled into forms and colors, swirling like a cyclone, ready to consume anyone who dared approach. At the center sat an old oak table, unscathed by time yet strangely anointed with dark energy. "What is this place?" Tommy whispered. "Something wrong," Sarah breathed, stepping carefully inside. The memories floated around them, each word thickening the air with foreboding. They swirled, revealing faces she'd long buried. Memories of laughter turned to cries echoed in her mind, voices she couldn't forget. "Take a seat." The shadows coiled at the edges, merging into a single silhouette that morphed into a faceless figure. "Share with me your tale, Sarah. And I will share mine." Tommy tugged at her sleeve, fear etching itself deeper into his brows. "Mommy, I don't want to play," he said, trembling like a leaf in wind. "Neither do I," she replied fiercely, but the shadows pulsed, the words coaxed her mind, promising resolution, clarity, redemption. She felt the weight of every choice she had made, pressing down like gravity. "Don't let it trick you," she urged Tommy, heart racing. "We can leave. We have to leave." But the whispers wrapped around them, stitching them into place. She blinked, and suddenly Tommy was out of reach, ensnared deeper in the shadows. "Tommy!" Panic surged. The shadows enveloped him, his cries muffled, becoming just an echo in the void. "No! Get away from him. Face your truth," the figure murmured, curling closer. "It's all that matters, it's all you need." The walls trembled, reality fissuring as Sarah braced against the onslaught of emotions threatening to consume her. "No! I want tea. I refuse." But the shadows whispered again, sweet and tempting. "What would you sacrifice to save him?" And in that moment, amid the turmoil, Sarah knew she stood on the brink of an unfathomable choice. Could she confront the darkest parts of herself to save her child, or would the shadows extract a price that she could never afford to pay? The question hung in the air, thick and suffocating, a silent scream waiting to be answered. As the darkness surged toward her, anticipation prickled her skin. What horrifying truth would lie on the other side if she gave in? The shadows danced eagerly, revealing just a glimpse of what was to come. The library trembled as Sarah's heart pounded in sync with the chaos around her. Shadows swirled and danced, beckoning with the promise of buried truths, and every whisper was a reminder of the darkness looming closer. She tore her eyes away from Tommy, who was thrumming with fear, leaving him in the shadows for just a moment. There had to be a choice, a tether to pull them both out of this nightmare. "Tommy, listen to me," she urged, the weight of her voice grounding them both. "We need to find a way through this together." She forced him to look at her, igniting the flicker of hope in his wide eyes. In that moment, she felt a burning determination. She had to confront her own darkness to protect her son. There was no other way. The figure loomed, the shadows coiling like snakes, whispering promises that tugged at the raw frayed ends of her mind. "Face it, Sarah. What will you sacrifice to save him?" "No!" she shouted back, voice echoing through the looming darkness, cracking like thunder. The walls shuddered in response, as if the very defiance in her spirit reverberated against their weight. She turned toward his small, trembling frame. "Tommy, no matter what happens, you have to run. You have to find a way out." "But Mommy," he stammered, cheeks glistening with tears. "I want to stay with you. Please don't leave me." Fear twisted in her gut, but survival, her instinct as a mother, ignited a fierce fire. "Then you have to trust me. Trust that I will always find you." She bared her teeth, fighting against the overwhelming dread sniffing at her heels. "Childish notions." The figure snarled, fingers reaching out. "The past can only consume you. It always ends the same." But Sarah stood tall, grounding herself against an unfathomable pull, her voice ironclad with conviction. "I face my past on my terms." In response, the shadows shrieked, the atmosphere thickening with rage that twisted into a surging whirlwind. "No! You will not defy me. You must understand what looms over your head for your son's sake," I said. "No!" Sarah screamed as the room fractured, a rift opening up within the shadows, unveiling swirling memories. She cut through the storm of darkness with sheer will, racing toward the old oak table that sat beckoning in the heart of the chaos. As the walls trembled, she caught sight of remnants of her childhood, fragmented memories filled with laughter, pure joy, and the echoes of her father's love that quickly turned to bitterness. "This ends now." She lunged for the first glowing book she saw, the leather spine marked with her family name. Each name, each choice written within these pages was a knife embedding deep into her heart. "Oh, but it only gets darker." The figure coiled tighter, its voice smoky and sinister. "Open the pages, dear Sarah. You'll see everything you've tried to bury will come back for you." With shaking fingers, she tore the book open, feeling with each flicker of the pages that her entire world could fall apart at any moment. "Stop!" she yelled, forcing herself to flip through the memories, those violent truths of neglect, betrayal, and cruelty that permeated beyond her own home. Each turn of the page revealed horrid secrets that twisted her insides, and as the weight gathered, so did her resolve. "I see you. I remember." She clutched Tommy close as visions of pain unfolded, distant echoes of her father that synchronized with her own heart's fear. All the pain lurked beneath the surface of every cherished relationship. The weight of abandonment suffocated her as it came rushing forward, battling against the light. In that whirlwind of emotion, she could feel it, her soul awakening, piecing back together lost fragments. "It's released," she gasped, feeling strength spill from her voice. The shadows began to dissolve around her as she confronted her father, the source of the curse holding Maplewood at bay. "I won't be a victim any longer." Suddenly, the book burst into flame, illuminating the dim room. The warmth of the light washed over her, and she took a step back as a shockwave radiated around, enveloping them both. "No!" the figure cried out, anger and disbelief melding into one venomous scream. The shadows tightened, but Sarah pressed forward. She could feel Tommy's grip tightening around her waist. "Run, Tommy. Now!" He didn't need to be told twice. The shadows screeched as he scurried past, and with each beat of her heart, the light grew brighter. She felt empowered, each step yielding confidence while tearing apart the darkness pulling at them, yet just as they made their way toward the exit, the world twisted sickeningly. The figure grasped her arm, pulling her back, whispering in horrific tones, "You risk everything to save him. Are you willing to lose yourself?" But Sarah resisted, primal instinct roaring within her. "No, I refuse. I'll face my pain and turn it into strength for him." With one final push, the walls collapsed around her. A blinding radiance enveloped Sarah and Tommy, illuminating the path before them. The shadows retreated, and she felt the figure's grip loosen. Trembling with rage, they burst forth into the outside world, fresh air flooding over them. The darkness behind vanished, swallowed whole by the fading shadows. Maplewood stood before them, its secrets unraveling like threads littered upon the ground. They had survived. She could see it now, the sun breaking through, lighting the streets she'd once feared. "Mommy." Tommy's voice wobbled, joy flooding through his words as he hugged her tightly. "You did it." She knelt to meet his gaze, tears of relief spilling freely down her cheeks. "No, sweetheart. We did it. Together." And with that, the heavy veil of terror slowly lifted, revealing a new dawn in Maplewood. She could finally breathe again, knowing the shadows would remain in the past because now they had a future. The unearthing of truth had released not only them but the entire neighborhood from its torment. "Burden no more, it's time for healing," she whispered, holding Tommy close as the warmth of the sun wrapped around them. As they walked toward the light of a new beginning, Sarah knew the shadows would fade, and they would rise together, step by step, into a better tomorrow. Remember to subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. And smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Your support means everything. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. What do you think happened next? Let's hear it. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. True fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.